are able to leverage other people's money to put more money in your pocket, why would you not do that? Hey, everyone. Welcome back to episode number 5 to our podcast, The Facts of Life, where every episode has a different meaning that we'll be talking about depending on our guests or our topics for the word life, L.I.F.E. And I'll be your host, John Doan. Don't forget to hit subscribe or click like if you like what I have to say. Okay, so let's jump right on in. Today, the L in life will be particularly what I do for a living, which is loans, home loans in particular. I'm a lender if you haven't caught on to that yet. And what I want to talk about today is just the most apparent question or most popular question that's either trending or what we're getting telephone calls and text messages on or emails on a daily basis. The question being posed is, when's the right time to refinance? So if you're a homeowner and you don't know what a refinance is, that means that you can change your existing loan. So let's say you bought a home 5 years ago and you got a interest rate of about 7% and interest rates have gone down. There are multiple options for you as a homeowner. The most popular items or reasons to refinance, I would say the number one reason would be to always explore what we call rate and term refinance. That means you're simply not doing anything to your loan except reducing the interest rate. So when is it a good time to reduce your interest rate? That's a great question, and it all depends on your situation. So let's just stick to our example here, right? If you have a 7% interest rate on your mortgage that you got 5 years ago, there's a few things that you got to think about. Number one, you've been paying on this thing for 5 years already, right? And most loans are 30-year fixed. That means you have 25 years left to go. So is it worth it? Well, that depends. If you're doing any type of mortgage or home loan down, but it's not very significant, it's on a curve. And you have to look at that as, a consideration. However, if your 7%, right, is causing you high payments or, uncomfortability or changing your life because the payments may be a little high, then maybe restarting the loan over and doing a new 30-year loan may not that be big of a deal if it changes your life back and makes you more comfortable or gives you benefit, right? So you could do other things like save or, buy a new car or put your kids through school. Many different reasons why people do what they do, and it just depends on your situation. So let's talk about that. If you have a 7% rate and today's rate, let's say is 6%, right? Do you refinance? Do you start over the 30-year period again and lose the 5 years that you've already invested into? I have a quick answer for that. And this is sort of the rule of thumb. If you're just looking to lower your payment, number one, my rule of thumb, since I'm an investor and I also own multiple properties and investment properties, I will stick to this rule of thumb myself. And that rule of thumb is if I can reduce my mortgage interest rate by 1% through a refinance, and there's low closing costs, right? Low meaning, a few $1,000s or whatnot, and I don't have to pay a lot of fees and closing costs, then yeah, it's probably going to be worth it. It didn't cost that much. It's going to reduce my payment. It's going to make me cash flow better on a monthly basis. And the bigger your loan is, the lower your new monthly payment will be. Therefore, saving you more money, letting you, free up your monthly income or budget so you could use that money for something else. Right? And every loan amount is different. Every situation is different. That's the first rule of thumb. Now, what if interest rates just aren't going to be lower than your current interest rate? The second rule of thumb is if you were to do a refinance, however, rates are not a full percent lower than what you currently hold, you don't qualify for that, then I would say if you could reduce it by 0.5%. So in this example, you have a 7. If you can get a 6.5% interest rate, but it's free, meaning there's no closing costs, right? It's a no-cost loan. Well, why wouldn't you refinance? It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. I guess the only downside there would be the fact that you're starting that 5-year period over, but who cares? I'm going to be honest, the old American dream, hey, I want to own my home. I want to own it outright. That's like the old American dream. The new American dream, people, it's all about, leveraging. Smart though, and controlled, and just in a very organized way, as long as you know what you're doing. But you've got to leverage. If you are able to leverage other people's money to put more money in your pocket, why would you not do that? So I believe that the new American dream, still home ownership, but it's not about paying off your home and owning it outright. No, it's using that property, waiting for it to grow in equity, pulling money out and reinvesting, and just creating this machine that rotates. And while you're sleeping at night, you are gaining income, equity, appreciation, whatever you want to call it, return your investment, right? I think that's a lot more important. And if you've heard any of my other episodes, I've touched on this. My parents are from Vietnam, and just like a lot of other cultures or families or people from different countries, probably particularly people who don't trust the banking system in particular because of their countries, like Vietnam after the war, there was communism. No one trusted the banking system because they all have been ripped off. And there's just a lot of other countries outside of America where people have that mentality. So the culture says, pay off your home. Don't owe anyone any money, right? And that's the dream. Not here, not today. I don't believe in that. I'm not going to do that, right? I'm going to leverage and I'm going to keep on using my assets or my investments to turn it into more money. So with that said, those are the two main rule of thumbs if you're just looking to do a rate and term refinance. However, we're talking about, turning your money into more money. See, the next part that is really popular is, when you talk about home improvement, right? People talk about that all the time, but you have to know what your plan is and what you're going to do. It's got to be a calculated plan. You can't just go nuts, take money out of your property that has appreciated, and then just not have a plan or go overboard or overbuild your home and then not get a benefit. Let me explain. If your property, let's say just an example, is worth $500,000 today and it's old, outdated, hasn't been upgraded or updated for 20 years, let's say. However, if but compared to your neighbors and other properties that are in your neighborhood that are probably worth like, I don't know, $600,000, maybe 625, because they're fully modernized and updated, right? And it's not just about that fact. This is really important if you're looking to sell. Obviously, if your home is fully modernized and you are looking to sell at some point, you're just going to get more attraction. You're going to get more buyers. That net has been casted and it's just wide versus people who want to buy an outdated home and save money so they can do it themselves. That audience is small, right? You want to cast your net to the widest audience or group of people as possible. And that typically is, hey, I want to buy a turnkey home that's ready to go, that's beautiful, and I don't have to do anything. Your home will sell faster and at a higher price than any other home. So there's that benefit. Now, if we go back to talking about my example, right? 500,000 is what your home is worth now because it's like you got old oak cabinets, dirty carpet, dirty walls, aluminum or old school heavy, like really metal windows, nothing that's really energy efficient. All those things, all the above, old kitchen. Yeah, it's not going to be very attractive or worth much. So in this case, if you know that your neighbor's homes that have sold just like yours for 600, 625, fully modernized, would you spend more than $100,000 to do all the repairs or work? I wouldn't. That's not smart. But a lot of people do. So I want to touch on that. You only want to take out enough to do the amount of work that is required to bring it up to par, but you don't want to be negative. So I'll have people that come to me and they're like, John, I want to take cash out of my home. I want to do home improvements. I'm like, great. What do you want to do? They're like, yep. So my plan is to take out $250,000. I'm going to new kitchen and the highest upgrades and everything else. And I'm going to list it up to sell. I'm like, okay, great. Any idea what you think it'll be worth after you've done all this work that you're talking about? Because you want to drop $250,000 into this. And again, so like in this example, right, we're just going to keep to the $500,000 home value that they currently have. They want to pull out 250, right? And a lot of people will come back and be like, yeah, I think it'll be worth $850,000. How? That doesn't make any sense. Your neighbors are selling on the high end for 625. So you, sir or ma'am, will be highly disappointed. So it's my job to really advise. A lot of people don't understand the fact that if you take out money and you overbuild because you think that it will sell for that price, I mean, let's be honest, it's not a custom home. You're just overbuilding and you're going to be highly disappointed. So if I was going to do a cash out loan to do home improvements, all I'm saying is it's a great idea, right? Let's think about that number for a second. So if I go back to a $500,000 home and I take out $100,000 and do my best to really modernize, right? But that brings up my value another $100,000, $125,000, $150,000. That's a great idea. And I would highly recommend that. Not only do you get to enjoy a brand new or more modern home, however, you'll have a home that's ready to sell. If you're ready to, that's going to be most likely wanted by the majority of the buyers that are looking today. So that's another second reason to do a refinance. And, cash out. This is a big topic. Cash out. What does that mean? I just talked about one, taking cash out of your home to do home improvements. Here's a funny fact. Cash in your home is not cash in your bank. What does that mean? What I mean by that is that you're a homeowner. You've waited. You've gained all this equity and appreciation in your property. You're like, whoa, I bought it for $500 5 years ago, and now it's worth $1 million. So I have $500,000. I should be able to take that money out and easily because it's my house, right? Well, sorry to disappoint again, but cash in your home is not cash in the bank. You got to qualify to take that money out, meaning you got to be able to qualify for a loan. It's not that easy, but it's not that hard either if you work with the right lender. Hint, hint. Call me if you need some help. But, what I mean by that is, there's various reasons. Don't take cash out and buy a boat unless you really want to. I mean, I'm not going to stop you, but, my job is to really advise customers, when they're calling in, what my opinion is. And I'm very consultative. So when people are calling in, I always ask, like, what are you going to do with this money? And there's a ton of good reasons. We work with a lot of business owners who are like, I'm going to take this cash out, reinvest it into my business. I'm going to make more money, or I'm going to reinvest it or buy more product, to resell, which is going to make me a ton of money. I'm going to expand my business. Those are all very, very good reasons. Why? You're taking money out at 6, 7% or whatever, but you're going to turn that into 15, 20, 30% return on your investment. That's a good call, right? If you know what you're doing. Buying a boat, buying ATVs or toys or whatever, right? We all know they depreciate. Buy a boat. What's the saying? Happiest 2 days of being a boat owner, the day you buy, the day you sell it, right? And it's true. They go down in price. It's a loser. So if you're smart with your money financially, and you want to make good moves that are smart or whatnot, other good reasons would be, hey, for good reason, whatever it may be, doesn't matter. No judgment, right? Some people have no credit card debt. Some people have some, and some people have a ton. All of our lives are different, and it just depends on your situation. So let's say you have, I don't know, $50,000 in credit card debt. Let's say it's 80. Let's say it's $80,000 in credit card debt. You had a situation, you had to handle it, and it's over now, but now you're burdened with all this credit card debt. Your average credit card debt minimum payment, it's anywhere from like 2 to 3%. So we'll go conservative. Let's say it's 2%. If you owe $80,000 in credit cards at 24% APR, not only is that balance growing on a monthly basis, right? It's compounding. It's getting bigger and bigger. And, it's like a snowball effect, obviously. And your payment is 2%. So on $80,000, you're looking at about $1,600. Well, that $80,000 being refinanced and paid off with a cash out refinance at a fixed 30-year loan, which extends out that payment over 360 months, right? At a 6, 7% rate or whatever the rate is today. Hey, that 1,600 in payments will drop down to, I don't know, a couple $100, 180, $200, 250, whatever you qualify for. The point is you could save what, 14, $1,500 a month. That's big money. What is that? 18K a year minimum. It's like adding a part-time income to your household without getting a new job. I don't know, for lack of better example or phrase, that's how I look at it. So yeah, that's a good idea, you know, and it's a good idea as long as you are disciplined and you don't run those paid off credit cards now back up to that 80,000 or whatever. You got to be good at paying off your credit cards as if it was cash and just have better discipline, because you just can't use your house as an ATM to keep on paying for your lavish lifestyle, in my opinion. You know, and every year you're refinancing, taking more cash out just to support the lifestyle. That's not smart, you know. But if it's legit and you had reason to run up credit cards and you were investing or you had emergencies or there were things that were, you know, no doubt worthwhile getting into that in the first place, you do you. You know better, and this is a really good way to resolve that. Now, let me also just touch on that. If you do pay off debts, right, my recommendation is pay off revolving debts. This has to do with your credit. You know, we look at utilization ratios when you are, you know, running credit scores. So I know a lot of my listeners and, you know, viewers already know this, but we go off utilization ratio. I'm going to touch on that for a second. Let's say you have $100,000 in available credit card limits, not balances. Balance is what you owe. In this example, you ran up 80,000. That's 80% utilization or usage of your available limit. So when you're at 80%, your credit scores probably will drop about 100 points. If you were at 780, you will see this thing drop to the 680s, maybe even 650. So what do you think it means once you do this, you know, cash out refinance to pay off all your loans? Your credit probably jump up 100, 120 points, you know, which is a second benefit for paying off debt, getting your credit scores really high. And then as time goes by, you know, 6, 7 months, you can actually refinance again to do that rate and term to even lower that interest rate again. You know, it might be a two-touch deal, but there's a lot of ways to structure that. And to touch on that or to finish my thought process on, you know, the utilization ratio, loans, fixed loans, they don't affect your credit scores. It's only anything that's revolving, right? That means credit cards only. You pay off your car, doesn't do anything, right? You pay off a personal loan that's fixed for 3 years and you're making pay, doesn't do anything. Does nothing. It's only credit cards that hurt or help your credit scores in either way. So yeah, cash out. I mean, that's one way to go, but there's a lot of reason right now to do cash out loans. And from my standpoint, what I consult people on, I consult a lot of my customers on ideas, methods, strategies, on things I would do. I mean, I'm no, you know, I can't say I have a crystal ball. I'm completely, you know, expert in every field. However, I do know math and numbers, and I do know what makes sense and what does not. So let me touch on that. If you're going to take cash out of your home, there's several things that you could do, right? One, a lot of people who have the experience will take cash out of one property, use that as a down payment to go buy another property, right? That's a good investment. And I'll give more, sorry, we're going to cut this part out. I'll get into that a little bit more in a little bit because there's a whole different segment on that. However, again, you can take out money to reinvest. So if you are an professional or expert stock trader, you short markets and you know how to move money, think about this. Would it be smart to take out, I don't know, $150,000 cash out of your home at a 6% interest rate? And if you're on a roll and you're a pro and have been getting returns of 20, 30% return on your stocks or whatever your financial investments are, that's smart. You're taking money out at 6, 7%, and you're like quadrupling that over here in this other vehicle. So yeah, that makes sense, right? It's not like you're buying a boat that goes down where you lose money or a car, right? These are smart moves because what you're doing is taking money out, again, keyword was leverage, right? So you're taking money out and you are reinvesting it to make more money. You're just planting seeds, you're leveraging, you're using your own money, and then you're creating wealth off of that. Obviously, taking money out to go reinvest is a great idea if you know what you're doing. Don't want you to think that I'm trying to advise people to go and gamble. That's not the same thing. I'm talking about educated and professional and experienced investors who know what they're doing. Or if you don't, get with an expert like a financial advisor who can help you invest that money. There's never guarantees, but an expert will know what to do much more than you if you're not an expert, right? Now, the next part is the next segment of our show, actually, right? Is the I in life, right? So I is for investing. Yeah. And, what better way to invest, right, than to take cash out of your home, like I was talking about, and buying real estate. And everybody, you got to really understand, yeah, there's Bitcoin and stocks and short. There's like so many different things that you could do now, and everybody has a different opinion. It just depends what your flavor is, but don't forget historically and still through today, everybody, real estate is the number one vehicle for investing and making money and building wealth. Straight up, it's undeniable, right? You can look it up anywhere, stats, facts, whatever you want to do. You'll see that that's a fact. Why? Why is it a good idea? I think there's many, many reasons why, right? And so let's talk about that. How do you make money investing into real estate? Let's talk about how buying real estate is a leveraged investment. What do I mean by that? So if you're going to go and invest into, I don't know, let's just use an example, $100,000 you have today, and you want to go buy Tesla stocks, right? And let's say, I don't know, a year or two later, you made some good moves, either you set and forget, or you look at it every day, 15 times a day, making trades with your Tesla stocks. And, let's say you do a great job and you came up, I don't know, 30%, right? On that money, of that 100,000, right? You're up to 130, 30% profit, added to your investment of 100. Now you're at 130K. Not bad. Not freaking bad. That means you're pretty good, or you're lucky. Hopefully it's the first one, which is you're skilled. But let's talk about or convert that into real estate. Leveraged investment was the key term here, right? What does that mean? That means this. You're taking that same $100,000, but you're only using that as a down payment, right? And so let's talk about, let's use $500,000 property. You want to go buy by the way, that probably doesn't exist in most areas, but it's a round number and easy to talk about, because if you buy a $500,000 home and you do 20% down, that's that same $100,000 that I was referring to. So we'll use that in our example. $100,000 that you take and you go buy a $500,000 home. And if that home goes up, which is kind of conservative, for the last, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years, 10% return on your money, like a 10% increase on property value, right? That's $500,000 property. In 1 or 2 years, it goes up to $550,000. Do the math. You made $50,000, but you only spent $100,000. Do the math. That's $150,000 of your total money compared to that Tesla stock at $130,000. Do you see where I'm going at here? You actually make more. And if it appreciates more than 10%, you will make more, but you're leveraging other people's money to make yourself more money, right? But that's not it. It's not just the fact that it appreciates, right? Why is real estate so popular amongst the wealthy, right? A lot of people online, I'm like on Reddit, I read all these different opinions, or I'm on social media and people are like, F real estate, it's too much. I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to do this, or that. It's too much work. I just like to stare at my monitor and watch the squiggly lines go up and down. Yeah, it's not the same comparison, right? Number one, buying a property is tangible. You own, a property and it's tangible. You own land, you own property. And let's get into like the tax benefits. If you are a high income earner, right, And I don't know, from a federal standpoint, there's different brackets for different income levels. If you're at the highest, it could be like 35% of, federal taxes that you would have to pay for. So if you're making good money and you have a high income situation, you are looking for every avenue that you can to, legally, right? Deflect or write off or deduct, find deductions for your taxes. You can keep more of your money. And the IRS has rules for that, right? They have all different kinds of situations. How many of them are built around like making money off stocks? I can't really think of any. How many of them are based off of real estate ownership? So many. I don't even think I know them all. There's so many different categories to save money in taxes or deductions in real estate. So let's just go with the basic one. If you own a primary home, basically you get to deduct all the interest payments for the year and other things like property taxes you get to add on to that. Yeah, it's mainly taxes and, your property taxes for the year and then the mortgage interest that you pay. So I'm not even going to talk about, right? Well, we started with the example of you buy a home for 500, it goes up to 550. You're up 50K at 50% return on your investment. Remember, 50% because you only spent 100. You spend 100 and you make 50K. That's a 50% ROI, people, and that's like probably the first 1 or 2 years. And real estate goes up, it goes up and down, but you and I can't stop it. It's just going to keep on going up if you can maintain or have the means to maintain the payment and the property itself, and the upkeep. It'll keep on going up. Like there's nothing we could do about it, right? There are short-term effects that make the prices, go up and down. But again, it will keep going up. There's nothing we could do. I have never seen it dip and stay permanent. It just keeps going up. Like people go look up charts from like the 1970s till now. I'm not lying. It's factual. Can't say that about companies and, stock shares and investing into the financial market. Can't not say that, right? Companies go out of businesses. I don't know. Your house doesn't really like disappear. It doesn't work like that because you have insurance. But going back to it. So I was talking about how you've already made 50% return on your investment. Now you may have a $10, $12, $15,000 annual, benefit on your taxes that you don't have to pay because you own a property. Let's say it's $15K a year in tax benefits because you're, high wage earner or you make money, right? $15K a year. And then now second year is $30K. What's $30K in tax savings plus the $50K that it appreciated? Now you're at $80,000, people, in money that you have gained by spending this $100,000 and buying this home. That is an 80% return on your money. See, people don't get that. They don't see it that way. They just think about, what's my payment? Can I afford it? Is it the right time? Do I, buy now or later? Like for me, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's like, I know it's nerve wracking and you're trying to time everything. I want to buy this at the exact moment that's like, it doesn't matter sometimes. Look at my numbers, like hear what I am saying, right? And that was like the common and average numbers that people have been seeing in a short amount of period of time. I was only going off 10% appreciation. Some of these, like in the last 5 to 7 years, some properties have appreciated 12, 15% per year. I'm not talking about COVID where it was going up like 30, 40%. Let's not talk about anomalies here. Let's talk about steady eddies, right? Those numbers, 10, 12% per year, not a problem. So if I'm using a 2-year example, right, and your home appreciates $500,000 purchase, it goes up 10% per year. So year one, your home went from 500 value to 550. And by year number 2, it's now 600,000. You doubled your money. And then now your tax benefits. So anyways, what I'm trying to just tell everybody is that regardless of what you see online or the media or other influencers or people's opinions, like it's undeniable that real estate should be the number one investment vehicle in your overall portfolio. If it's not, yeah, maybe you don't want to own. Maybe you don't like to. but you can't say that it's because it's not a good investment vehicle or that it's not safe or that it's better or worse than investing into the financial market. I hope that makes sense. That is what I have learned over the last 20 years of being in the business, talking to major, wealthy, high end players that do have large real estate portfolios. And, it's undeniable. And that kind of leads me into the next part of, our show here that I wanted to talk about. I think about this a lot. And, now that we're talking about investing and loans and wealth, if you have been following, I have 4 kids. I think about this all the time, right? I've got 4 kids. One's in college. That's expensive. Having 4 kids in college, that's very expensive. So I'm not out here splurging. I don't have my Rolex on. I've got a Samsung watch, right? I'm just a normal guy because I'm not thinking about splurging or the day to day. I'm thinking about how do I turn my money into more money? One of the best ways you can go about that is we've already established buying real estate. However, I want to touch on this because it's getting harder and harder for the newer generations to buy. There's like a big gap. Either they come out smashing it, right? Whatever it is that they do, they're talented, they're smashing it, they're making a lot of money. So cool. They can afford and buy in today's market. Or they're just average. And these are one of my concerns. Like, are my kids going to be average? Right? I mean, who knows? You don't know. But one of the things that you can consider as a part of your investment vehicle that builds, if you care about this, because I'm just sharing that I do, I really do care about this. I would like to build generational wealth. I don't want to just spend all my money. My dream and my vision, obviously, first and foremost, that when my wife and I get old and we can't take care of ourselves, like I have the money to pay for top-notch, like care services. I don't want to depend on my kids. Like I don't want that burden on them. I just don't. If they want to help, cool. But I don't plan on it. I don't depend on it. And I say that because culturally, like in the Vietnamese culture, it's like required. That's our culture. Like, there's a saying and I'll try to translate, but it kind of goes like this. Your parents bring you into this world. They support you. And then when they get old, it's like a reversal. And now it's your turn to take care of them. So they live with you, as they get elderly and you care for them. You take care of them. You pay for them. You feed them, whatever it takes, right? But yeah, I'm an American that's, Vietnamese, obviously, born here. And, that's cool. And I do respect my parents and I actually follow that as a part of my culture. I take care of my parents straight up. I do. And I will. Same with my wife's, parents or whatnot. Like we're all in. But for myself and my future, what getting back to is I want to be able to put away enough funds so that no one has to take care of us and we'll just take care of ourselves. So that's priority, retirement, right? And care and all that. Number 2 is how do I leave Earth one day by leaving an imprint that would make me feel happy when I am ready to leave this world one day. And what I mean by that is I would love to have made enough funds or money and investments to buy a portfolio of real estate properties and have it grow. And my 4 kids will inherit or take over. And I will teach them to do the same thing over and over because these are going to be these investment vehicles that are going to keep on growing because, again, there's nothing you or I could do about it. They're just going to keep on going up. But my main concern or responsibility is to make sure the kids are disciplined and the approach, the strategy, and how to keep that going for their kids. And then those kids, and I want that to keep going, right? We have a little joke at home, but I call it the Doan Empire, right? That's what I would like to maintain, teach them how to keep on investing and flipping up. That's the dream for me. That's what I want to do. So if you think like I do and you care about generational wealth, or you think about how do the wealthy get so wealthy, I'm telling you, it starts right here with exactly what I'm saying. But you got to start it. You got to make some moves. And by doing that, you have a great shot of providing for your family, almost guaranteeing that they will be okay in the future. However, there's like a really fine line to that, right? You don't want to spoil your kids. You don't want to like spoon feed them. You don't want to use this as an excuse for them to not work in the future. That's the wrong message, right? That is incorrect. And I'm going to do everything that I can, speaking about family, to make sure that, I teach, mentor, and educate my own kids how to deal with money. Not only being humble, but how to turn that money into more money. And I don't know, how about not being a lazy ass, right? And being spoiled or being a brat. Like that's unacceptable, because if I really ingrain that in my kids' mentality or heads, and I do build generational wealth and am successful at that, they need to be able to teach their kids that, right? There's like a whole saying, right? Well, let me try to remember, but it's like first generation that comes to America, right? Works like crazy, does nothing but works, and then they save, right? And then me, second gen, I see my parents working so hard, and they usually second gen advances and does so much more and better and faster, right? Because you get the best of both worlds. You get that experience of society and culture in this country, but you get that crazy cultural like work ethic of your parents from wherever they came from. That combo is explosive. Look at me. I'm just going to say that's an example. If you followed any of my other episodes, I talk about that. And then the next part of the saying is, then third gen spends all the money first and second gen made, and we're not having that. That's a big deal, because it's true. Trust fund babies, blah, blah, blah. You hear about that. It's usually third, fourth gen that are trust fund babies. So it's our job, people, that if you're going to build generational wealth and you want to do what I do, make sure that it's not just about the money that you're going to make, and that it's mainly about the lesson and what you're going to do to make sure that this party does not end, right? So again, I think that's really important when you're looking to invest and just, I don't know, teaching, kids these types of things. And then, just touching on family, kids, this topic has been pretty big. If you know me, again, as a scout master of a scout group with over 100 scouts, one of the things that we always talk about is, like cell phones, mobile phone devices. We go camping. Are you allowed to have phones? Some parents with really young children are like, nope, I'm not comfortable with teenagers that are older with phones because of what they're looking at or watching, and influence these young kids that have no idea or not ready for it, right? So that does happen, and it's real. So talking about family and my own kids, I always ask the question, like, what do you think about social media today? That leads me into the last part of our show here, right? The E in life. It's entertainment. Because that entertainment to our kids, after talking to so many parents and other families, and like, what do you do? How do you control this? What age? It's really tough. I think everybody has a different method, but I think I can share what I think after, going through this stage with 4 kids, cell phones, social media, all that stuff. Number one, I think that kids, it's not the age, it's their maturity level. And you will know better than me or anybody else, right? You may have a 12-year-old that's really mature compared to a 14-year-old that is very immature. So those two things really matter. In our household, our rule of thumb is once you enter high school, 9th grade, you get a phone. They were pissed, right? Because they're 7th grade buddies or friends, right? All on their phones, 7th, 8th grade. Why can't I have it? It was really difficult. And we had to do that 4 times, freaking hard. But we did it. But I'm glad we did that, because I think that we were able to delay the exposure, right, to all the things that are online right now, right, that anybody can access. And, once you enter high school, I'm not saying that you're mature or fully ready, but I do think that you definitely are more ready. And why high school? That's when activities get really crazy, right? I'm talking about sports, cheerleading, volleyball, in our family at least, scouts, like everyone's scattered. We need devices to track where our kids are and to communicate. And it's difficult if you don't have mobile devices. So it comes to a point where like you have to have devices, right? Even starting out, our method was, hey, you know what? Everyone's gonna have a cell phone. But boom, 10 p.m., I had this like charging station. Everybody had to come and plug their phones. It was a charging station, and you had to bring it in to charge your devices. And in the morning, you wake up and you grab it. Because we don't want you on your phone at night, in the middle of the night, doing who knows what, looking at whatever it is that you can look at. Although I'm techie, so my household has, DNS blockers and our modem router. I got all different kinds of tools that I have in place, to help with that. And you should look into that too, or just, parental apps that you can install on phones. However, there's only so much that you can do there. Now, I do find it very difficult when I see 8, 9, 10-year-olds with phones. Again, not judging because every situation is different. Maybe it's a single mom and you have no choice. But you do have a choice, actually. You can just get a phone watch. They have the gizmo watches that kids wear. All it does is dial phone numbers, when needed. I did have that for my kids, but there's no like mobile device or app access, which is what I'm talking about here. You just need a phone, people. There are solutions for that, and you're just not looking into it or don't want to do that, whatever it may be. And like when they're young, why do you want to give them like a $400 or $500 like device that they could easily ruin? But anyways, going back to that, I do think that there is some ages where it's way too young to give them a phone and to give them that access to the unknown. And people, I'm telling you, kids are smart these days. You think that your parental locks or things that you have done or monitoring is the end all be all? Hell no. These kids are smart. YouTube University, Reddit, whatever. Go check it out. They're hacking into these devices, unlocking stuff and using VPNs, whatever, right? Stuff that you just don't know about until you know about it and then stop it. But if you don't, they're all hacking through and they're doing it. They're accessing anything they want to, and you don't even know. Hidden apps, VPN, a lot of different ways to do it. But if you don't know what to look for, then they keep on having access. Anyways, sorry, I went on a tangent there, right? Talking about entertainment for our kids. But I'm passionate about this. I feel like it's really important. One of the big concerns right now across, our world is the attention span or attention, deficit, I guess, that our new gen is growing up in. Just think about this for a second. Reels and TikTok and scrolling. We're posting on TikTok and things like that. So one of the things that, as an example that you're seeing is you have to capture someone's I've never seen it like this, by the way, but you have to be able to capture someone's attention literally in the first, I don't know, like 1.4 seconds, I believe is the actual number. Because if you don't wow them or bait them to watch the rest of your video, they're going to scroll. So think about this. That's the new rule of thumb, 1.4 seconds. That's pretty quick. Like I watched this ad for earbuds on TikTok and the kids, what they did was they blew up a firework. So when you scrolled onto that video, it was like a boom. It was a kid lighting up a firework and then running away. And then as it blew up, he jumped in, he goes, hey, these earbuds are blah, 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 blah. Right? Why do you do that? Because of the lack of attention. Because everybody's so quick to scroll to the next. What's next, right? Scroll left, scroll right, up, down, down. Next. You can't focus anymore, right? No one can sit there and focus. What do you think it's doing to our society? And if you think about that, how long will your kids grow up, be able to sit in a chair, take a test? I don't know, just all the things that it could affect. You're their parents. You think about it. You do the research, right? Like I did. But think about that. Are you helping or are you hurting our future kids, and generations that are coming? Think about that. But with that said, I hope I didn't piss you off. I hope I made you think about a couple things. I hope with loan experience, right? And some investing tips and tricks there. Some family advice and some entertainment for your kids. And with that said, I want to thank you for joining us today on the Facts of Life podcast, episode number 5, hosted by me, John Doan. Subscribe or click like if you like my show. See you next time. Thank you so much.